I want to welcome our guest, Ann Coulter, the author of Resistance is Futile, Adios America, and dozens of other bestsellers. Ann, welcome to the program this evening. And Happy New Year.
It's so great to be here with my two favorite people.
Well, Ann, you have another amazing column this evening up at Breitbart.com where you explain why we weren't chanting build the border security in 2016. We were chanting build the wall, and yet now the Democrats are offering us border security. Tell us about this.
Well, I've noticed that's what they're pushing on MSNBC and CNN every 6 seconds, that, that's the compromise. Of course, that's going to be the compromise. Of course, when I first started my career with high crimes and misdemeanors about the case for impeachment against Bill Clinton, You never get called on being wrong as a pundit. I went to the Supreme Court arguments in the Paula Jones case, which is what set it all off. And you could go back and check this on Nexus. Absolutely, the universal opinion, other than moi, was that, the Supreme Court's going to split the baby. They'll say Paula Jones can sue the president, but she'll have to wait until he's out of office. I'd been at the argument. I went home that night, wrote up my article on it for Human Events, and I said, no, Paula Jones is going to win, and it's probably going to be overwhelming. And, of course, as you know, in the end, it was 9-0, and Paula Jones won, and there was no splitting of the baby. So maybe I shouldn't be worried about all of these idiot pundits saying, there'll be a compromise. No wall, but border security, border security. Anyway, hearing this over and over again and realizing how stupid Republicans are, I just had a flashback to the campaign, listening to every candidate but Trump swear up and down that they were all for, just gung-ho for border security, and then quoted the descriptions of each one of them saying that from the Des Moines, the something Register?
Des Moines Register, yeah.
Yeah, right before the Iowa caucuses, and they went through each one. Jeb Bush, he's for border security, and Marco Rubio, he's for border security. Christie, we need to secure the border. It's just a BS phrase that means they're not going to do anything. We know that, and that's why the guy who talked about Mexican rapists and building a wall and repealing the executive order on anchor babies got more votes than any Republican in the history of presidential primaries.
It was
now, how about that last
yeah.
Last week, Ann? I thought of you when this happened. You have a legal immigrant police officer killed in the line of duty, allegedly by an illegal alien. Could there be any more symbolic setup? I mean, it just encapsulates the entire debate. Americans are not opposed to legal immigration, especially people who put on the uniform and fight to protect the country and their communities. And here you have someone who was let in, allowed to stay, by the way, who was also aided and abetted by people who had been deported themselves and somehow found their way back into the country. And yet we don't see that in the media. They've just ignored it. There's nothing at all. And border security, right, this empty phrase. I don't think people know what it means to secure a border. We're concerned about securing a country.
Yes. How do they plan to secure a border without a wall? I love that cop, Singh, I think his last name was. Obviously, I read the stories and looked at the pictures of him and his family. It was such a sweet family. But I want a moratorium on legal immigration. Though Singh can stay, I loved him, and people like him. But you're totally right. It's the other conspirators who aided and abetted the illegal alien staying here so he could kill a cop in California were, of course, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor of Oakland. We have a long list of aiding and abetting the illegal alien cop killer. That ought to be Donald Trump's Kate Steinle, but it won't be because liberals have gone mad. But if Trump is for something, they are against it. So even though all these Democrats, as you know, if you're on Twitter or reading the Breitbart, They've all come out for putting a fence on the border. They voted for a fence or a wall on the border. What was it, the Secure Fences Act or something? They've done this for years. If they really wanted to go after Trump, they dropped the nonsense with Russia, which is just getting more and more embarrassing, and attack him for not keeping his promises. But I really think that's the end game of what's going on right now. As, by the way, I warned Trump, I think in my first column after the election, how he could blow his presidency, and reminded him of the fate of the first President Bush, who lost when the Democrats got him to break his pledge, read my lips, no new taxes. Democrats later admitted they didn't even care about the tax issue. They didn't need more taxes. They just needed a Republican president to break his pledge on taxes, and they stole the tax issue from us. There were actually people voting for Clinton 4 years later when, of course, Bush won, in large part for being a big fat liar on read my lips, no new taxes. There were people who were voting for Bill Clinton because they wanted their taxes cut. All they want is to get Trump, lure him into it, say, you'll be a statesman, you have to compromise. What's this obsession with the wall? It's your wall, and your shutdown. Their end game is make him break his promise on the wall, and they will instantly start calling him a liar.
Yeah, and that's a very effective charge against any politician when you start calling them a liar. And
yeah. I mean,
even though everyone knows politicians bend the truth.
I know they always call him a liar, so I suppose that's somewhat ironic. But in this case, it'll be true, and it's going to hurt.
Absolutely.
Now,
I know Rebecca's jumping to ask you something. I just have one more thing to ask you about this. The shutdown, the standoff. Trump seems to be on solid ground here. Is this the one Republicans finally win? Yes, I know last year Democrats shut the government down and they kind of lost a little bit because they wanted to get DACA passed, and the image of helping illegal aliens without helping Americans was too much for even them to bear for very long. But this is a different setup. New Congress, the media are licking their chops just waiting for this to happen. They think this is going to be the end of Trump. Can Trump stick this one out? Do you think he can dig in and win this shutdown fight?
He totally can. I did not realize we were going to have such a transactional presidency. You have to watch him like a hawk. You have to keep haranguing them. You have to hold their feet to the fire. You can't just sit back and think, oh, yeah, no, he'll do the right thing. No, you have to constantly be watching this guy to make sure he doesn't screw it up. But of course he can win. I mean, today I really think people could complain about me complaining about him too much, but this was really dumb today. I mean, I'm glad he's continuing the shutdown, and he did say, yes, I want a wall. Like, it's not that much money. He did have like 2 sentences. But number one, for that hour-and-a-half press conference he held, 98% of it was about Syria, ISIS, Mattis, McChrystal, Romney. So I'm totally set on knowing what's going on in the Middle East right now. But could you get back to this country? Even the reporters who must know immigration isn't a good issue for the Democrats, even they got bored with this endless exegesis on the Middle East. Would you get back to make America great again? Talk about that. You win when you talk about immigration, Mr. Trump, Mr. President. And the other thing was, I mean, at that last Oval Office meeting, it was comical the way Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer kept saying to Trump, as they're discussing the wall and whether they're going to fund the wall, they kept saying to Trump, we should really have this conversation behind closed doors. We should really talk about this privately. I don't think we should do this in public. A child would know. Hey, this must be bad for them to discuss in front of the American people. I'm going to insist that every discussion about the wall and the shutdown be in public. Why shouldn't it be? Trump is the most transparent president we've ever had. We know it. There's no point to White House memoirs. We know every fleeting impulse he has because he tweets it out. Why did he allow them to have a behind closed doors meeting on immigration? The more public the debate is, the easier it is to win because the people are on his side, even the Democrat people, absolutely the African American and the Hispanic people, the left behind, the working class. They're the ones who are hurt the most. Have this debate in public. It will kill the Democrats and he will win.
And I feel exactly the same way. I mean, this is clearly a loser issue. One of the things that polls really bad for the Democrats is the impression that voters have that they care more about illegal aliens than they do American citizens, particularly working class Americans. Poll after poll, last year we had Pat Caddell, the veteran pollster, tell us that polled through the roof. People have that impression, and that came out loud and clear when Trump had that negotiation in public with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi last month. In fact, that was exactly why they didn't want to discuss this in front of the cameras, because, it's a clear weakness. Now, you mentioned in your op-ed today, you write that Trump has hired people or surrounded himself with people who don't agree with him when it comes to the need for a wall or border security. Explain that to our listeners.
Well, it's true generally. As far as we know, we Kremlinologists studying the Trump administration, the only person in any place in the administration who agrees with Trump on any of these MAGA issues, particularly immigration, is, I guess, Stephen Miller. There was Bannon, but what really set me off about it was the head of Customs and Border Patrol announcing on ABC's This Sunday, that don't worry, we're sending doctors to the border. They will be treating every child under 17 who's brought to the border. If there are any problems, we'll get them their medical treatment. Oh, for Pete's sake, we're going to have every parent of a sickly child in Latin America. I mean, I feel for the parents. I would too. Hey, I could get an American doctor. I could get first world medical care, and guess what? I don't have to pay. Talk about creating a magnet for a rush for the border. Point one. Point two, as I say in the column, it's not doctors aren't frozen and kept so in case we need them, like the petroleum reserve. If there's an emergency, suddenly we can unleash all this petroleum. If there's an emergency, we can unleash all these doctors. No, any doctor being sent to the border is by definition being taken away from an American who needs medical care. It's not as if Americans are just rolling in this excess free medical care. So, let's start sending it to foreigners.
So
I had the same reaction when Governor Cuomo from New York commuted or pardoned several people who had been immigrants to this country and committed crimes so they couldn't be deported by the Trump administration. And I thought, well, the other criminals must be pretty upset about that. I mean, what about American criminals?
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So they're offering these perverse incentives still. The only thing that's going to really be effective in, putting up something that will obviously deter people is a wall. I mean, of course, we still need to deal with our asylum laws and all that, but a wall. And
right, that is
so
the minimum irreducible requirement. I always hear people say, oh, the wall, it was just a metaphor. Oh, screw you. Cheap health care was a metaphor. How about civil rights? Oh, it's just a metaphor. Instead of passing a civil rights bill with actual specific commands, why don't we just pass a law saying everybody be nice to black people? That's the equivalent of all this border security and, it's a metaphor. No, it's not a metaphor. It is the minimum irreducible requirement of what we are asking for. Yes, we want a wall. We also want E-Verify. We also want an end to this scam of illegals running across the border when they're 9 months pregnant, dropping a baby and calling that baby an American citizen. No Congress ever passed that law. No Supreme Court has ever announced that is the law. It's insane. Why would that be in the Constitution? Americans must think to themselves, that's weird. I wonder why the Founding Fathers would put that in the Constitution. Well, great news. They didn't. It's not there. It's just a custom because William Brennan put it in the footnote of an opinion in, 1968 or something. It's only been around for a few decades, and it was a footnote. It was dicta. It wasn't even the ruling of the court. It's nonsense. Why hasn't Trump signed that executive order yet? We heard about it during the campaign when he was trying to, gin up votes for the midterms. Is it that hard to sign the executive order? That there are so many things, but yes, the wall is the minimum requirement of what Trump promised and why he won.
And now the big focus is on, oh, well, you said Mexico would pay for it. This is what Democrats are playing, doing the nee, you said Mexico would pay for it, so why do we have to fund it? What does Trump have to do to get the funding for this thing? Because this is where we got the logjam. What does he got to do to get off a high center, and with this negotiation with Nancy Pelosi for the money? What do you think?
Well, a few things. I guess 3 points. One is he didn't say they were going to prepay for it. We can get the money anytime. We can demand the money. We can get it tax remittances. We can take it out of their foreign aid package. He didn't say prepay, so this is a BS complaint to begin with. That's point one. Point two, nobody cares. It was funny. It was a laugh line. I'm sorry. I actually am a Trump supporter. I will tell you, no one cares. The wall is a deal at any price. And point three, why doesn't Trump start talking about taxing remittances? All this money is being taken out of our country. I mean, it's funny that the way Democrats or the left argues these things, they argue, one case on Monday and then the complete opposite case on Wednesday. So on Monday they'll say, oh, we need all these illegal immigrants because our economy would collapse if they weren't here spending their money and, sending money into Social Security. Well, then on Wednesday, no, we can't tax remittances. They need to send their money home to their grandmother in Chiapas. A lot of countries don't allow you to do that. It used to be in any of the old Soviet bloc countries, for example, you'd have to turn over all of your money before leaving the country because that is money that isn't being spent in Russia or Poland or wherever. It's not money that is being spent here in America. And I forget what it is. It's in my book, Adios America, but it's some astronomical figure. I don't know, $200 million, $200 billion, whatever it is. It's being sent, just sucked up in wages by illegal immigrants. Mostly illegal immigrants are sending the money home, mailed back to Mexico, which is spent on Mexican goods, mostly companies owned by Carlos Slim. That's why they can't afford to buy their own food, and we need to give them food stamps. That's why they can't afford, school lunches for the kids, and they have to get free medical care, because the money they earn by being paid slave wages here in America gets sent back to Mexico. Trump explained, not in this level of detail, but Trump explained that the way he was going to make Mexico pay for the wall was by taxing the remittances. When they send the money back to Mexico, it would, just to break the boring debates on cable news, it's the same thing every night. If he would just say it, it would make the debate interesting. And I really want to hear the Democrats say, no, we shouldn't be taxing illegals. It would be monstrous to put a tax on sending money out of the country that will not be spent on an American shoe shine or a car wash or a lube job or to pay some American to do something, to tip an American to do something. It will be sent back to Mexico and go straight into Carlos Slim's pocket.
Well, we could also just charge people a couple extra bucks to cross the border every day.
Yes. I'm sorry. I go on and on with remittances. There are very, very many ways to get Mexico to pay for the wall. He didn't say prepay, but he ought to, throw it out there. I don't know why he didn't bring it up. I don't know why he didn't start the wall on day one of his administration. I don't know why he didn't tax remittances on day one of his administration. I believe, as I say in the column, that although generally taxes do have to come from Congress and start in the House of Representatives, there are all these banking regulations about, know your customer, that gives the executive the president, that is to say, a lot of authority on requirements for our money and not sending money out of the country, or at least taxing the money that gets sent out of the country. I think he could do completely on his own. But whether he can't or he can't, it's a great discussion to have. He said it during the campaign. It is in his immigration policy paper, the policy paper that's the greatest political document since the Magna Carta. So why can't he do it as president?
Well, okay, so I totally. But let's back on the whole thing with Nancy. Right now, where it's what does he got to do right now, do you think, to get out of Congress this funding? Or should he be looking for the other pots of gold or whatever? How can he get the money right now? Because obviously, Mexico isn't going to prepay it. What are we going to do right now to get this funding, do you think? As this government shutdown is in day 12, what would you tell the president?
What I think I'd do... I wouldn't have had that meeting in private today. I would talk about nothing but immigration, the wall, the families being killed by drunk driving illegals, that lovely policeman up in California who was killed by the illegal. I would talk about this, all of the opioid deaths, the heroin being brought in just by drug cartels, just waltzing back and forth across the border. The more he talks about this, the more that's how he won more votes than any other Republican in presidential primary history. That's how he won the election. That's how he wins everything. He was so good during the campaign. So good. He never backed down. He was attacked as much as he's being attacked now. All of this business about, it's so hard, but that even the Republicans aren't helping. Okay, never mind. Now that I know it's hard. See, that's a horse of a different color. No, come on. He faced just as much when he was running. He didn't back down, and he won. That is how to win. Many people have said, I think, many Breitbart writers have said, and I've been saying this to the president since soon after the election, he ought to have an Oval Office address, a serious calm. He's very good when he wants. He can be presidential. He used to say that, and the press would laugh. I can be more presidential than anyone when I want to. He actually can be. His introduction of Kavanaugh, for example, I thought was better than any president's introduction of a Supreme Court nominee I've ever seen. When he wants to be presidential, he can be presidential. He should sit in the Oval Office, be presidential, be serious, say, look, a lot of wild things are said during a campaign. They've been said by me, by my opponents. But illegal immigration is a serious issue, and it is hurting the least among us. And you should, sit in the Oval Office and play the clips of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi promoting this. And like I say, talk about all the things I was just talking about. He could give a devastating address, put the Democrats so much on the defensive. Whatever happens in the end, I think he should use the military and Homeland Security to build it. But this could be a huge, huge political win and save his presidency. If he makes this a major public issue. The Democrats cannot win if people are allowed to talk about immigration. That's why the plan has always been, don't let people talk about it, don't let people think about it.
Well, you know what? That's the thing. Every president in the past has used the bully pulpit that they have. Barack Obama, when he wanted to get Obamacare passed, he called a joint session of Congress to address them on the issue. I mean, prime time live and all that. I mean, talk about using it. And when Ronald Reagan wanted to get his tax cuts passed, he had an Oval Office address. It was one of his best, remember? And he encouraged America to call Congress and to wire Congress, back then with telegrams and all that. And it was effective. And Tip O'Neill famously said, we've got a telegraph, blizzard hitting us in Capitol Hill because Ronald Reagan was telling Americans to contact your member of Congress to vote for his tax bill. This is one of the things I just don't understand why President Trump doesn't use an Oval Office address, as you said. And also, in your column a couple of weeks ago, Ann Coulter, you told us that, hey, President Trump, the left, the Democrats are going to attack you no matter what. Might as well have them attack you on something like building the wall. If he were building that wall, using the military or whatever, making it a fact on the ground, a reality, they would be nonstop, like hysterics about that. And they would waste themselves being hysterical about that instead of being hysterical about the Mueller investigation, right?
Right, or Stormy Daniels or Michael Cohen. First rule of warfare is you pick the battlefield. As long as he picks immigration, he will win. They can't help themselves. They will say things that will enrage the average American. I mean, your Reagan example is so great because as high as taxes were until Reagan came along, and they've never gone back to that level again, it hit mostly high earners. Now, yes, with bracket creep, it was hitting the upper middle class. Here is an issue that I mean, every family that has been touched by the heroin epidemic will be on his side. Every family, there are a lot of families. People always, the crime issue has always been very good for Republicans. People always underestimate why a crime issue is so important. Just take the case of Kate Steinle. Okay, that's one dead American. But think of all of her family members, all of her friends, all of her, classmates, college friends, the neighbors, the people in her hometown. A crime like that, it goes out in waves, and so many people end up being affected by it and horribly affected by it. Immigration is so much bigger than Reagan's tax issue, and Trump can be very presidential. Of course he should do this. I can't understand why he's not, which is why at some point you begin to suspect that either he doesn't believe it or he's incompetent.
Or he's just not being given good advice, and also I think, or he's being told something ridiculous. I have no idea why, but it seems to be a no-brainer.
The incompetence category.
Ouch! Ouch!
Well, maybe he wants
Coulter,
bipartisanship.
Yeah.
I mean, look, every major policy change that's stuck around until Obamacare, I guess, has had some bipartisan support. Maybe it just makes sure the wall stays the wall if he gets some Democrat votes. He has to know that there are some Democrats who are going to...
Who will be forced to, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so one has to look at it that way, I think. I don't know if he should use a joint session or at this stage an Oval Office address, because he's got the State of the Union coming up, and everybody's going to be watching that, especially with the Democrat majority now in the House. So maybe he uses that. But
that's true. If he does it,
yeah,
that would be great. The reason I like an Oval Office address, I mean, this isn't a huge point, but it would just show him as the president. I just think there's something very powerful about that, and to get away from they want to try to demean the important issues that Trump raised during the campaign. Very, very important issues, somber, serious issues. We're a compassionate people, but right now our people need their own help. And I just think he can address that single issue in a very, very good way. Whereas the State of the Union, he does have to talk about other stuff at the State of the Union. An Oval Office address would be somber and serious, and it would take away the carnival atmosphere around a lot of his appearances. And it would be focused on this one issue, which is such a winning issue for him. It's like that is the Democrats' kryptonite, the immigration issue, and Trump has it, but he won't use it.
let me ask you one more question, and this is where some of the debate is right now in conservative circles. The Today Show, in an interview that's going to be aired tomorrow with Nancy Pelosi, asked her whether she would give any funding at all to the wall, and she said no money for the wall. Somehow they avoided asking the obvious follow-up, which was, what about a fence? Would you fund a fence? Now, I think that would be a harder question for her to answer, but let me ask you this. Would you be okay with a fence as opposed to a wall?
I would like exactly what Israel has. I wish Israel would build it. As you two probably both know, Israel's fence, Israel is a country that has to be concerned about security and a country with some self-respect. And what they've done is, I mean, it's just stunning. This year they started on an underwater wall, which will be part wall, part fence, but the wall along the border with Egypt, I believe, is part wall, part fence. It was 99 point something effective when it first went up. It's about 16 feet high, hundreds of miles long. but 99% effective wasn't good enough for Israel. This is the attitude our country should be taking if you care about your country. So in certain parts along the wall, they added another 10 feet, all with razor wire at the top. Number of illegal immigrants from Africa have fallen to 0. 0.0. It is now 100% effective. So I think the main reason a lot of people like me get nervous when we hear about a fence is we just don't think it's going to be an effective fence. It seems like that they're backing down. But no, of course, a combination of fence, walls, I'd throw in a moat.
I think Obama made fun of the moat. Remember, Obama went to the border and said, these people want to moat with alligators.
Excellent idea.
Yeah.
You know what?
Anyway.
I'm at this point. I'm for like that thing that he tweeted out with the spikes on top that look like just like one of the a fence with, that you put around a house or something. I'm for anything right now. I'm okay with it. Just at least something.
Well, he doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. Lots of countries, and the reason I think you turn to Israel is they're an ally. They have major security concerns. They take their security and the safety of their people seriously. They've been working on various walls since I think around 2002. They have loads of experience. We often turn to Israel on tips on how to deal with terrorism, how to do airport security. In fact, that's one thing we ought to be able to get out of Kushner. How about he call up Netanyahu and say, as a gesture of friendship to America, let Netanyahu give a speech talking about the great success of their wall and how it's kept their country safe and secure. Just, a little tip to America. Look at what we've done.
That would be epic. I love that. That's exactly what he should do. That and give the Oval Office address. As a matter of fact, I nominate Ann Coulter to write the Oval Office address. And that should be like one of your columns. That should be like a week long, a couple weeks of columns. Ann Coulter, write the address that he should give. It will just send it to him.
I would stop doing everything else and sit down and write it for him if he would deliver it.
America wants to read that. It wants to hear that address, really. So I desperately hope that it'll take you up on that offer. Ann Coulter, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to encourage our listeners, if they haven't already, to buy Adios America and Resistance is Futile and check out all your wonderful columns at Breitbart.com or at AnnCoulter.com.